G'day everyone, it's Maydad here tonight from YNV Health and Wellness. When I set up to start this journey in setting up these Zoom sessions with all these great practitioners and qualified professionals, I wanted to learn everything I could about behavioral science from breath work, meditation, yoga, nutrition, ice baths, and so much more. Now, tonight I'm joined with another great individual, a great friend of mine, Dave Pemberton, who is known as the Breath Coach. Dave holds a qualification as a facilitator with a Buteyko breathing method. He's also an advanced instructor with the Oxygen Advantage breathing program. Dave, thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to see you here again. How have you been and what have you been up to?
G'day, mate, Dad. Thanks for having me on again, mate. It's always a pleasure to see you and to speak to you and educate about how important our breath is. Oh, what have I been up to? Mate, I've just moved to the Gold Coast, as you're aware, and it's beautiful up here, but I'm travelling back down to Sydney. I just held a workshop last Saturday, actually, for 7 CEOs that flew in from Singapore. It's a breath workshop. It's all about
Amazing.
functional breathing. It was all about the delicate dance between carbon dioxide and oxygen. It was a lot to do with how we can use our breath to actually control our emotions and also how to regulate our nervous system. So very important when you're in very stressful environments, particularly if you're the top of the tree with your own business.
When you talk about, Dave, when you talk about the delicate dance between the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, can you share a little bit about that? Because that could be something very new that some of our viewers watching this back may not be familiar with.
Yes, well, it's interesting that carbon dioxide is your primary stimulus to breathe. It's not oxygen. So, and this is known as the Bohr effect, discovered by Christian Bohr, Danish scientists back in the early 1900s. And the more we breathe and the more we offload carbon dioxide, the less oxygen optimization our body has. See, there's this thing, as I said, the Bohr effect. Let's just go a little bit of science and nerd out for a tick here. We've got hemoglobin in the red blood cells, which is carrying our oxygen around our body. Now, that oxygen cannot get off, let's call it get off, or depart the hemoglobin into our working tissues or our cells without the presence of CO2. So if we're breathing too much or we're offloading too much CO2, the oxygen is not being delivered to where it's required for us to be optimally moving or breathing or even digesting or sleeping. Our body's holding on to the oxygen. So we actually need to increase our tolerance to CO2 and build that up through various exercises, which is fundamentally what the Buteyko breathing method and the Oxygen Advantage are all about. It's about increasing our body's tolerance to carbon dioxide to actually have more oxygen optimization or diffusion from our blood into our working tissues. It should be oxygen advantage is quite interesting because it should be carbon dioxide advantage rather than the oxygen advantage.
What a great what a
Yeah,
great
'cause when we
description
understand,
that was.
yeah.
I've never heard that one before. Dave, are you able to share a little bit about Konstantin Buteyko, how he founded the Buteyko breathing method, and a little bit about his background?
Yeah, well, Konstantin Buteyko was a doctor from Russia, which is where the Buteyko breathing method originated from. And it was an interesting story that he was actually diagnosed with a fatal high blood pressure or hypertension. And also in congruence with walking around doing his rounds late one night, it dawned on him that looking at his patients, was it the patient's sickness feeding into their laboured breathing, which was loud and controlled and very visible, or was it the breathing feeding into their sickness? So then his research led him down the path of that if he just reduced the amount of air that people took in or the way they breathe, going from mouth breathing over to nasal breathing, some of those symptoms started to dissipate. And he's also breathed his way out from this fatal hypertension, which he was only given 12 months to live, to him just passing away in 2002 at a very, very old age. So this is the whole reason why the Buteyko breathing method was formed. When the Iron Curtain fell down, it was well known throughout Russia and Ukraine and all those Eastern Bloc countries. But when the Iron Curtain fell down in the 80s, it was finally allowed to get out to the rest of the world, in the Western world in particular. And in fact, the first trials for the Western world were done here in Brisbane at the Mater Hospital. And that was in the early 90s, 1993, 1994, I believe. And it was primarily used as and using the word cure is very, very definitive and very big, but it was to aid in the symptoms or reducing the symptoms of asthma, which had overwhelming results. So much so that, reducing reliance on puffers and relievers by 90% within 3 months.
That's incredible.
And less reliance then, or reducing symptoms by 70% in 3 months. But the big one, with only in 6 weeks, improving your quality of life score by 54% in 6 weeks by practicing the Buteyko breathing method. So as an asthmatic, as a former asthmatic who was taking Prevent, which was basically a steroid called Seretide for 30-odd years, I now take no medication for my asthma. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and do the Buteyko and give up their medication. The Buteyko breathing method should work as a complementary tool for their current asthma plan. And always check in with your doctor just to see that. I've had fantastic results with people with asthma and reducing those symptoms of anxiety, reliance on the puffers and things like that. So even in exercise-induced asthma for athletes that continually breathe through their mouth, getting to swap over to nasal breathing has been a game changer.
Yeah, it has for me, Dave, and I owe that all to you. Since you first introduced me, the first time that you came and presented at my Footprints retreat here in Bondi, you taught me to tape my mouth when I went to sleep, and I did that for 6 months. And as a result, I'm finding my sleep is better. I'm getting better filtered quality air with my sleep. I'm not so run down, and it really has allowed me to feel more energized throughout my day. And I think, as you said and mentioned, the importance of breath, nasal breathing is relevant to everything. And like, you do a lot of things. You're not just a breath coach. You've got qualifications, a wide range of qualifications. You've got your qualifications as an ice bath facilitator. You've got your qualifications as a personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach. But without breath, as you mentioned to me before, what can you do? And that is the core ingredient for all those different things that we talked about. If you want to elaborate on that would be great, Dave.
100%, mate. We spend a lot of time on nutrition. We spend a lot of time on movement. We spend a lot of time on sleep, and we spend a lot of time on our mental health. And there's a lot of education, there's a lot of courses, and there's a lot of advertisements out there for that. But there's one common denominator for each one of those things that I've just mentioned, and that's the breath. Now, if we're not breathing correctly, if we don't have functional breathing, we don't have functional movement. If we're not breathing correctly, we're not digesting correctly. If we're not breathing properly, we're not sleeping correctly. And if we're not breathing properly, our mental health is not where it should be. See, the breath and the way that we breathe is an absolute component that should be, I believe, the number one pillar of health. Because
100%.
without the breath, none of those other things is going to be optimally. Now, you might spend a lot of time doing nutrition and sleeping. Let's take sleeping. If you're still sleeping with your mouth open, you're in stress. Mouth breathing is a sign of stress. So if you're snoring, drooling on your pillow, you've got sleep apnea, regardless of whether you've got dark room at 16 degrees, iPads on, earplugs in, 528 hertz music or anything like that. If you are still breathing through your mouth, you're in stress. So when has your body had a chance to restore itself? Which is what sleep is all about. Rest and digest, rest and restore. Sleeping should be still. We shouldn't be getting up to go to the toilet during the middle of the night. We shouldn't be having night tremors. We shouldn't be having night sweats. Children should not be wetting the bed. And it's all directly attributed via research that if we're not breathing correctly, we're not living optimally. So my purpose, and I do a lot of those other things, but once you understand how important the breath is with our optimal overall health and well-being, you'll never go back. I just want to go back to the mouth taping there for a quick period. There's a lot of companies out there that are promoting mouth taping. I need the viewers here and the people on board just to be careful if they are going down the mouth taping path to not completely seal the lips. You need to find a tape that goes across the lips or crossing, but still allowing air to come in and air to come out. Because if you completely seal the lips and you need to cough, or you need to be sick, or you need to offload some extra CO2, it can't happen. And I do have research that shows if you completely seal the lips, in 50% of cases, you're actually going to worsen the symptoms of sleep apnea and snoring. So I really highly recommend finding a mouth tape that you can still able to, what we call as a phenomenon called mouth puffing, to release air or still be able to communicate. You cannot fully seal the lips. It could actually be detrimental to the health, and which is what you're trying to do by mouth taping. I use mouth taping, and I use a tape that goes around the outside of the lips, and it just gently encourages the lips to go.
It's almost like a bagel, everyone watching. It's almost like a circle with a hole in the middle, and it goes, and as Dave explains, it goes around your lips, and it's not right across like a tape, a gaff tape or anything like that. It's actually a circle, like a ring.
Yeah. Now, the reason for the mouth tape is if you're a chronic mouth breather, we can only change behaviors at a subconscious level. So how do we change our neural pathways if we're still awake? Well, it's best to do it when we're asleep because we're in subconscious, we're unconscious, we're below conscious at nighttime. And our body's number one goal is to breathe. So it will find a way. And it will be through the perfect breathing apparatus, which is the nose. I mean, the nose filters the air, humidifies the air, it's antimicrobial. There's so many benefits of nasal breathing as opposed to mouth breathing. Not to mention that nasal breathing is the precursor to the parasympathetic nervous system or vagal tone, whereas mouth breathing is a sign of stress. So mouth taping is very, very important in converting from being a mouth breather to nasal breathing. And if you do suffer from anxiety, I wouldn't recommend doing it as soon as you go to sleep. I'd wear it during the day.
Get used to it. Get comfortable with it.
Do it while you're awake. Do it while you're distracted. Do it while you're reading a book, watching television, or whatever. Just making sure that you are calm when you go to sleep. It's not meant to be stressful. That's what we're trying to get away from, as being stressful. So mouth taping, in my opinion, is very, very important if you have the right tape.
Let me go back to what you said. David tapped on a point about the importance of breath work. Now, I'm going to refer this to sports people and athletes, and I'm going to let Dave dig deep a little deeper and elaborate. But in boxing, for example, you hear and see fighters come back to their corner, and their trainers are always telling them, take a deep breath, take a deep breath, and breathe out, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. And the thing that you don't want the fighter to do, because what that's going to do is force him to induce too much air and put him in a stressful state. So if you can just picture this, and then Dave will elaborate, when I finish my breathwork exercises or when I come back after a training round and I'm tired in that, I take quick breaths, but slow, quick breaths through my nose. And as I keep breathing, naturally the breath, the nasal breathing becomes so slow and it ends up being like this. And I'm able to reset, override my central nervous system and put myself in a parasympathetic state, which allows me to be in a rest and recover state and allow me to recover as quick as possible. Not by breathing in That's exactly what you don't want. But I'm going to leave it to Dave to elaborate and dig a little bit deeper on that. But that is something that you see all the time with athletes, especially with people in combat sports, and it is exactly the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, mate, as a PT, I was very, very guilty of saying to my clients or in group classes, big breaths in, big breaths out, to calm yourself down. Now, not realizing that's not how science works. See, mouth breathing is a sign of stress. So if I ask you to take a big, deep breath in through the mouth and out through the mouth, I've just amplified the stress response. So if you want to recover and calm yourself down, it's got to be through the nose. It has to be nasal breathing, and we have to reduce the volume of air. Because if we can still hyperventilate through our nose if we take too big a deep breaths. So recovery should be controlled. Yes, it should be slow, and yes, it should be deep. But deep doesn't mean big. Deep means far from the top. So what that means is proper recruitment of the diaphragm. So we're needing to get that air down into our diaphragm, nice and calmly, inflating the alveoli, which is at the bottom of the lungs, creating more surface area for more oxygen to grab onto, into the capillaries, and then being diffused into the bloodstream. Now, if we're taking in big breaths through our mouth, we're using our chest. We're not actually getting the air or the oxygen where we need it. So what happens? Well, we usually take bigger breaths and more breaths because we feel that we need to still get more oxygen in. But if we do the complete opposite and breathe low, slow, and deep, and through the nose, we will recover quicker. I'm currently training some athletes where I have them recovering after, let's call it a 40-meter breath hold sprint in 3 to 4 breaths through their nose. So much so on that third or fourth breath, I get them to block one side of their nose, which halves the volume of air that's coming in. Then they've got a 45-second rest, then they go again. We do that 8 times. And every single time they are recovered and ready to go. Now, there is research out there that shows that by doing this type of sprint work every 30 seconds on the 30 seconds or thereabouts, we can improve our repeat sprint ability by up to 64%. Now, if you're in a sport like AFL, like soccer, like rugby league, like rugby union, like basketball, where your ability to run flat out or have a high intensity and then recover and be able to do it again very shortly afterwards, learning how to recover in those between moments is the utmost importance. And if you're breathing in through your mouth, your body is running in your anaerobic system. Your carbs, sugars, and glycols, which we all know are in short supply because they are meant to be used for fight or flight. Now, if we use nasal breathing, we're using oxygen as our primary fuel source. So aerobic means with oxygen. Anaerobic means with less oxygen or little oxygen. So why not use a fuel system which is in abundance and are available to us all the time? We need to know how to use nasal breathing, which is what the oxygen advantage is for sports-specific protocols. Now, there's 2 people I'll bring to mind right now. 𝙈𝙖𝙮𝙗𝙗. She's currently the world's number 2 female tennis player. Last year, she was photographed taping her mouth closed and practicing. Okay, why? Because her physio is an oxygen advantage instructor, and they know the importance of reducing the amount of air coming in to optimize oxygen uptake. And the other person is 𝙈𝙖𝙮𝙗𝙗, who's arguably the number 1 striker, plays for Man City, coming out saying he tapes his mouth closed at night for recovery. Once again, going back to sleep, sleep should always be about recovery. Once again, if you're breathing through your mouth during the nighttime, your body is not recovering. So if this breathing techniques are that important for athletes, us as mere mortals, we've got access to these same breathing techniques anytime we want because we've got the perfect breathing apparatus right in the middle of our face. We don't need a magic pill or a magic spray or a magic whatever. We've got it. We just need to understand how important our breathing is. Now, we breathe over 20,000 times a day. We need to reduce that a little bit and we'll live longer, but we're going to feel better. You know, we're going to eat better. We're going to recover better. We're going to sleep better by just changing that breathing through the nose. Now, I'm not saying never breathe through your mouth.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Dave.
If,
Anybody watching this back, I'm going to let Dave elaborate on this.
yeah, as an
Dave's
athlete,
not saying that you should never breathe with your mouth. There's
yeah,
in some instances where we'll be talking about different energy systems as well, but predominantly you should be nasal breathing. But with some exercise, with some activities like 100-meter sprints and stuff like that, yes, we can understand you're using a different anaerobic energy system and your mouth breathing. But bear in mind that these are explosive, short bursts that require a lot of energy, but are over usually within like 9, 10, 11 seconds. Different energy systems. The benefits that Dave is talking about in nasal breathing are endless. I'm going to let Dave elaborate about what I said, and we'll touch on another point.
okay, so as an athlete, I would not expect an athlete in game day or anything like that to actually think, oh, I've got to breathe through my nose. Dave said I have to breathe through my nose. No, if you're an NRL player and you're nasal breathing and you're going to take the ball up, I don't care how you breathe. But it's in those moments of recovery. It's in those moments of downtime. It's when you're training, you're doing all the work before you actually get into the game. So your body's used to being able to recover. Your body's also able to work better with a higher tolerance of CO2, so you breathe less. Now, breathing takes a lot of energy. Imagine if you could reduce the amount of energy that goes into your breathing and put it into your sport that you love so much. Now, going back to the 100-meter race, I implore everybody to go and watch Sha'Carri Richardson. She's the current, I think she's the 100-meter world record holder or thereabouts. She's an American sprinter. She
Yes.
sprint 200 meters and 100 meters with her mouth closed. She runs very, very relaxed and very, very efficient. She's super focused, which is what nasal breathing allows you to do. Once you build up and get used to that tolerance, and it's usually in about 6 to 10 weeks, we can have you nasal breathing and running 5Ks, nasal breathing. But if I got you to go out and run 5K now and you're a mouth breather and you're used to mouth breathing, you won't last 200 or 300 meters because the air hunger or that buildup of CO2 will be too great and you'll revert back to mouth breathing. So that's what the oxygen advantage and the Buteyko breathing method does. It changes you over to nasal breathing. It increases your tolerance to carbon dioxide and it reduces your breathlessness. So you can do more with less. Less effort, same energy output. It's a beautiful thing, nasal breathing.
It sure is. And like I said, after doing intense exercise, I'll give you an example like jump rope. For me, it's jump rope or something like that, you know. I notice straight after I'm finished and you want to breathe. I'm no longer mouth breathing. Everything is through my nasal. I'm using my nose. As Dave said, the most important device for us to breathe is our nose. And I breathe in, it's quite quick, and then I breathe out through the nose, but the next breath is slower. And then by the third breath, it's really slow. By the fourth and fifth, I'm just about back to normal. And when you are in these sports like boxing or combat sports where you only have 60 seconds to recover, have a drink of water, take instructions, reset, you know, overlook your game plan and get back out there and take action and do better than what you did the round before and, you know, follow through. Your breath is the most important ingredient or tool in your body.
I
And
agree. I've got a saying that if you can control your breath, you can control your life. Now, that statement may be very definite, but your breath is related to your emotions. For each emotion, you've got a different breathing pattern.
how interesting is this, Dave, when you talk about that? Because like earlier in the piece, when you were talking about something, I wanted to say this. But if you look at people um, who are tired and who are stressed, they naturally just can't think as well as they did when they were energized, recovered. Have you noticed that in yourself? Any of you watching this back, when you are stressed, when you are angry, when you are tired, when you are run down, psychologically, mentally, your mind just does not react as clearly as what it does when you've had good quality sleep, when you're in a relaxed state. And that's all related to what Dave is talking about and sharing with us tonight.
Yep, good decisions are very rarely made when you're stressed or angry. So good decisions need to be made with a clear and focused mind. So how do we get there quickly? Well, we breathe in and out through our nose. It's a simple exercise like breathing in for 5 seconds or breathing out for 5 seconds. So we call that coherence breathing. It'll just calm us down very, very quickly. So if you're in a corporate sense and you're having critical conversations, whether with your shareholders or partners or, team management leaders or anything like that, and you want to get your message across, you need to be getting across calmly, but also super credible and focused. Because coming from a point of overbearing and loud, and if you're stressed and you're anxious and you're trying to get a message across, it's not going to be well received if you're all those things. And I mean, like for right now, I'm breathing through my mouth because I have to, because I'm speaking. So if you speak a lot and you're offloading a lot of CO2, you need to be able to use the nose to down-regulate, particularly if you're having those, if you're about to fire somebody or if you're about to hire somebody. What we call critical conversations are very and very important, that both people, both parties are calm and focused on the present or the conversation you are having at hand, which is what I teach to corporates as well. And I know you're doing similar things too with corporates, but if you want workplace to thrive or workplace productivity, it can't happen when everybody is super stressed. So introducing practices like nasal breathing, being completely transparent where both parties know that you've got to calm down before you actually speak to each other, you're going to get your message across a lot better, or the problem solution or the problem resolved straight away.
Yeah.
As using this tool.
Yeah, your ability to listen, react, respond, and scan what's being said to you, scan your environment, ability to respond to it, and just be more effective and efficient is so important. It's not just the breath itself, it's what's affected when it's not done correctly and when you're clouded and too much oxygen has been inhaled in. It's only going to cause inflammation and so many other things that are just not going to allow you to think clearly, feel a little bit clogged up, and just not be as focused as you can be. Dave, I know that there's a lot of different exercises that you gave me. Maybe you could share a little bit tonight through the Buteyko and oxygen advantage methods for people to do. I know the one that you have me walking up and down the room. Can you share some of these exercises tonight? Some of these people watching this back, have a good listen to what Dave has to share about this, because I've been doing some of these exercises and they've literally changed my life in the way I'm able to recover, deal with inflammation. And as a person who suffers from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, breath work has allowed me to get on with my day so much better. Dave, are you able to share some of these exercises?
Yeah, absolutely. All the Buteyko breathing through the Buteyko Clinic International and Oxygen Advantage are all available on YouTube free of charge. You just look them up and you can go there. But the fundamental foundation of both those companies or the programs is nasal breathing. So I do recommend nasal breathing where possible, through sleep, through rest, through wakefulness, and light to moderate exercise. Now, if a client comes to me, a sporting organisation or a corporate, I do some baseline testing, which is the body oxygen level test. I do a CO2 tolerance test. My first test is I always get people to sit down and on a couch, sit up nice and tall, and see if they can just breathe through their nose for 2 minutes. If they can breathe through their nose for 2 minutes, then that gives me the green light to go, yep, right, you've got some type of nasal breathing activity there, whether you've got a deviated septum, nasal polyps, broken noses, or what have you. If you can breathe through your nose for 2 minutes, you can breathe through your nose for a lifetime. So then we go into some of that baseline testing, and from that, various exercises are issued. Now, one of my favorite exercises is called Breathe Right, Breathe Light, which I will just quickly run through that with you now. And I like to do this one lying down. So you lie down onto your back. You lie there and you just let your body breathe in and out through the nose, calming yourself down. And then when you feel totally relaxed, you start to lessen the volume of air that's coming in. And the cue that I want you to remember is just you're breathing in so lightly that you're visualizing the nostril hairs in your nose not even moving. Then as you exhale, you can put your finger under your nose and you should not hardly feel the air coming out. So it's called breathe light. Now, the object of this is to induce what we call air hunger. Now, air hunger is the carbon dioxide building up in your blood, which is sending messages to your brain to actually take a breath. So what we're trying to do is find where we can actually have a comfortable air hunger, and we can breathe for that between 1 and 5 minutes. I love doing this before I go to sleep. I put my mouth tape on and then I breathe as light as I possibly can. It is a form of meditation because you're focusing so much on the way that you breathe. You're visualizing that air coming in so light and you're breathing out so light, and you're in control of your breath. Now, if it's too much of a big air hunger and you do need to take a deeper breath, that's okay. You just then go back to finding that tolerable position where you can control that air hunger, as I said, for up that to 1 to 5 minutes. And soon enough, you'll progress to 3 times to 10 minutes a day. And just that one exercise alone, there's no energy output. There is no stress on your body. You are lying down. Therefore, you've got no risk of injury or anything like that. It is resilience training. It is mental toughness training. And it is control training. But the outshot is you're increasing your tolerance to CO2. The less you breathe, the more oxygen you actually get. So that's a beautiful exercise. And then once you've mastered that, then we can do that while we're walking. Then we can do that while we're jogging. And then we can do that while we're running. But that takes time to get there. And the other exercise I like to do is just breath hold walking. So you might start off with 10 paces. You'll take 2 silent breaths in and out through your nose. On the second exhale, you'll breathe out. So in a sense, we've got empty lungs, but I'm just going to say empty lungs, but your lungs won't be empty. It's just that natural pause between an exhale and an inhale. You'll just pinch your nose slightly, just block the nostrils, and then you'll walk for 10 to 15 paces. And once again, you'll feel this air hunger like you want to breathe. So we get to our 10 to 15 paces. We take our fingers away from our nose, and we just recover in and out through our nose. Now, we might wait 30 seconds to 45, even up to a minute, and then we repeat. We might repeat that 8 times. So if you start with 10 to 15 steps, I would say you'd probably increase 5 steps every week until you reach the magic mark of 60 steps while you're doing a breath hold walk after an exhale.
Dave, I just have a question for you.
Yep.
I do that, as you know, I can get up to 100 steps. 110 was my most.
Yep.
I usually do 50 to 60 every day of breath holds. And even sitting here watching you talk and listening to you talk and stuff like that, I've turned my attention to my breath in the sense of that just in the same way when I'm sleeping, and I notice that I do just breathe in through my nose and out through my nose. But there was one moment where I was oxygen hungry. As you said, there was a moment where I didn't have to breathe through my mouth and that, but I did breathe through my nose, but it was a little deeper than the other ones. But even now, I'm not tired. I'm mindful. I'm not drained or stressed, and I'm relaxed. And I'm able to breathe through my nose and breathe out while I'm talking to you. And I do feel so much more comfortable doing it. And so occasionally I may do this. But in the past 10 minutes, I've done that twice. Where before I started nasal breathing, I was doing it more frequently and I was getting lightheaded. And I'm a guy that exercises, eats well, sleeps consistently on the same time. Very rarely do I kind of miss my sleep, go to sleep beyond 10 o'clock, 10:30 or anything like that. So I know discipline, I have a good structure to my day. So I think nasal breathing and what Dave is talking about really is um, a core ingredient um, to really helping us in so many ways, in so many different things that Dave's been talking about. Dave, a couple of other exercises that you do give people is not just the breath holds and walks that I do, but you also give them the what was the other one you gave? I think Rob was talking about it as well. There was a quick inhale and an upburst and then an exhale. Can you share a little bit about that and the benefits of it?
Yeah, that one's known as the physiological sigh. It's a big, deep breath in through the nose, so it's nice and controlled. You feel your diaphragm drop down and expand, your rib cage expand. And just when you think you've got enough in, you take another little sharp one just to fill up. And what that does is that inflates all the alveoli down the bottom, deep down into your lungs. So once again, more surface area, more oxygen carrying capacity. And then if you just want to breathe out and think relax, yes, you can breathe out through your mouth. I like to breathe. See, I'm a stickler for nasal breathing. I like to do nice controlled breath out through the mouth. Now that one is if you don't have too much time, if you're about to walk on stage, you want to calm yourself down before you walk into the boss's office, things like that. You can quickly do that one if you haven't had time to prepare earlier. There's another exercise which I give for asthmatics and it's a recovery exercise, which is 2 breaths in and out, silent breaths. So breathing should be imperceptible. And then you're just going to do breath holds for 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you'll breathe in, you'll breathe out, you'll breathe in, you'll breathe out. You'll block your nose and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you'll breathe in, you'll breathe out, you'll breathe in, you'll breathe out. So that's about 10 to 15 seconds there.
So what you're saying, Dave, is you breathe in and breathe out twice for 5.
Yep, yep. And then you take a
And you
small
hold it, and you hold it for 5.
Yep, 5
How
seconds.
often?
And you do that up to 2.5 minutes. And that is a calming breath. It is also a focused breath.
What's it called?
That's called a recovery breath. So this is the breath work that's for as soon as asthmatics sense that first sense of chest tightness. If they do that exercise and they do it for a minute to 2 to 3 minutes, their asthma symptoms should subside. The earlier you get onto it, the quicker your asthma symptoms will go away, which is that exercise I do, or you can just do little breath holds, because what that's doing, it's increasing carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. Carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. It opens airways. Now, those small breath holds that we're doing, we've got nitric oxide, which is pooling in our paranasal sinus cavities. Nitric oxide is also a vasodilator, and it's also an airway opener. So it's going to open up and then accompany the oxygen deep down into your lungs. So it's very, very important for people with asthma, snoring, and sleep apnea to breathe through their nose to get the benefits of the nitric oxide. Now, as I said before, carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. What does that mean? It keeps your blood vessels open, or open as much as they possibly can. When we breathe through our mouth, our blood vessels constrict because it's a sign of stress. So what happens? Our heart has to beat quicker, which in turn makes our breath rate quicker. But if we breathe through our nose, we've got the increase of carbon dioxide now in our bloodstream. So people with hypertension should be nasal breathing as well to increase that tolerance to CO2 to reduce their symptoms of hypertension.
So what you're sharing, David, is that carbon dioxide is a vasodilator, and that is why it is so important for everybody to nasal breathe. Now, we're not saying that mouth breathing should not be down at all times, because there's different mouth breathing techniques that you can do to release emotions and other things that we can go deeper about. But in general, nasal breathing is a great tool for the human body in so many ways.
Mate, there's a question that I always ask everybody. It's how are you breathing when you're not thinking about breathing? And the answer should always be through the nose. Now, I'm glad you touched on the other purposeful side of breathing, which is conscious connection breathing. So most of everybody out there would have heard of the Wim Hof method, which is basically Tibetan pranayama called a sacred breath called tummo. And that is, and as Wim Hof says, he doesn't care how you breathe. It's in through the mouth. So what he's effectively doing is hyperventilating. And as I mentioned before, that is vasoconstriction. So he's constricting the blood vessels, which is now reducing the blood flow to the brain. So your body goes into survival instinct. So it starts to shift, it starts to move, it starts to whatever. And this is where we get those releases, because it builds up so much that we release, right? And this is a very important thing to denote, that it is called conscious connection breathing. We are breathing specifically for a purposeful outcome.
So conscious connection breathing is a breathing, rehearsed breathing for a specific outcome.
Perfect. Absolutely. So if you go to yoga, there'll be various poses where most of the time they'll get you to breathe in and out through the nose, but sometimes they may want you to breathe out through your mouth, or they may want you to pinch one side of your nose and breathe in and out through the other. These are all what we call conscious connection. Pilates do it too. They've got their hydraulic system between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. Sometimes they'll use a mouth open or a mouth closed, or breathing through the mouth or breathing through their nose and out through their mouth. Whatever that is, that's all we're breathing. That is for a purpose.
David, when you talk about connection breathing, I know when I used to do competitive aerobics, every routine that I ran for the different championships was different. And one of the acupuncturists who studied Chinese medicine and that said to me, no one in Australia that I know, or literally in the world of competitive aerobics, is doing this, but I want to use you as a guinea pig to do this. And he said, I want you to choreograph your breathing patterns according to the routine that you're doing. And I said, how can I choreograph my breathing pattern when I'm doing a one-arm push-up, etc.? I'm doing jumps in the air and all that. And he said, there are moments in the routine, there are moments in the event where you are able to have nice breathing spaces. Those are the moments where you can milk, get on about what you got to do, and then come back again, reset, and get on with your routine. So when you finish your routine, you won't feel so lightheaded like some of these 400-meter runners do, or other aerobic athlete and gymnastics athlete used to do before they discovered all this stuff about nasal breathing. And rightly so, I felt so much better, and I was able to perform and win medals in every championship that I competed in.
Perfect. And once again, nasal breathing gets 100% recruitment of the diaphragm. Now, your diaphragm is so important for intra-abdominal support, right? There's research out there that people have breathed their way out of scoliosis. Okay, that is getting their spine nice and straight by breathing deep, which is the diaphragm. It's not a big breath, it's a deep breath, and activating the diaphragm. It's a muscle clouded in a lot of fascia, but it's 360 degrees. It is the top of your core. Now, we go to the gym and we do our biceps, we do our chest, we do our glutes, we do our legs. But what about the most important breathing muscle, the diaphragm? How do we train that? Well, we can train that through breath holds. And it is vitally important. So for your movements, having that intra-abdominal support, you probably looked better, you felt stronger, you're able to recover better because you've got the proper recruitment, and your breathing 100% is now matching your movement, right? From a psychology point of view and from a judging point of view, it would have looked seamless. Same thing with dancers. I've got a very, very elite dancer, my daughter, and she mouth tapes every night. She's 14 years old. Without her breathing properly, would her plies look as good? Would her nice standing tall? Would her leaps be as good? Would they be as high? I'm not 100% sure, but I can tell you right now, it looks better when she's not having to overbreathe, when she's just finished a routine. She can walk off calmly, and she can recover and get ready for that next competition or that next dance within that competition. Breathing, I cannot attest how much breathing has changed my life in the last 3 years. Now, I'm a young 57. I've reclaimed my life. I was a chronic mouth breather, had asthma. I've had 4 heart operations. There's a lot of different stuff that my body has gone through. And was it directly related to my breathing habits? Well, being a mouth breather and being in chronic states of hyperventilation and stress 24/7, I'd say there's a good chance that it would have attributed to some of the ailments that I've had and that I've been through. But right now, I'm as fit as a fiddle because I've got my breathing under control.
And you know what I've noticed it's allowed me to do, Dave, and I reckon, I'm sure that you will back me up on this. It has allowed me to be so much more mindful,
Oh,
mindful in decision making, mindful of my environment. And it's because my head's clear. I'm not saying I was scattered before or anything like that, but my head is clearer. I know, at any given time, we all have every 5 seconds, there's a message sent to us through our internal dialogue. How we entertain that is personal. It's individual with every different one of us. But through nasal breathing, it has allowed me to be very mindful and be able to control all that internal dialogue. I'm no longer thinking about, all right, I've got to rush over there. I've got to get the milk. I've got to pick up the kids from school. I know that I've got to do that. But at the same time, I'm just not stressed having to do it.
100%. And we're at that age in history where it's now been shown that we have, at this moment in time, the shortest attention span ever. We're almost competing against the goldfish now as having the shortest attention span due to whatever reason you want to call it, technology, there's information downloads, all the rest of it. So how do we keep our attention and our focus? And I remember my school reports made that if David had only focused and concentrated a little bit more, he could have done blah, 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 blah. Have we ever been taught how to concentrate? No. I've been told to concentrate, but what does that mean? Have we ever been told how to breathe? No. We haven't. So breathing and focusing in our breathing is one way we can also start to learn how to focus and concentrate. So you get two for the price of one. We learn how to breathe better through the nose. We also know how to calm ourselves down, but we also can start focusing and concentrating on our breath. And once we get used to that focus and concentrating on our breath, then we can start to use that focus and concentration on other things that we're starting to do in our lives. Because we're focused, we're calm, now we can actually concentrate.
And
So,
this is what we're talking about. Dave is talking about life habitual patterns, making good habits, bad habits, and as a result, living longer, healthier, being able to breathe properly, getting better quality sleep, being more energized, and enjoying life a lot more. And quite literally, just being more productive in everything that you do. Dave, it's always amazing catching up with you and chatting to you about this topic that we're always fascinated about, breath work. And everybody's different. Everybody has their own outlook and view on life. And I know I spoke to a guy recently and he said, "Oh, I don't do breath work, mate. I don't need to do that. I just keep fit and that's it." But I think especially today with all the education and science that we're discovering and people are becoming so much more health conscious with their health and wellness, for longevity, especially people in their 40s, parents who know that they can't go back to being 21-year-olds or having that agility and that recovery rate and they want to be able to have that energy and be able to give the best of themselves to their family, to themselves, and whoever else they service in their community. And breath work, as Dave said earlier in the session, it is the most important tool to help you facilitate everything you really do. Sleep, rest, recovery.
Oh, 100%, mate. I think with a bit more education, you said there's a lot more awareness now that thanks to people like Wim Hof, there's James Nestor who wrote the book Breath. I encourage everybody to either download from Audible or buy the book Breath by James Nestor, a scientific journalist who went on a 5-year journey discovering all things breath. That will blow your mind, how important breathing is and how important our ancient civilizations understood how important breathing was. Sadly, we're at that generation now, and if we just look around, and actually everybody should be looking up mouth breathing in children for a start, going to Google and having a look there, and then having a look and watching the people walk around, the children's faces. having a look at how they've been got away from being the nice square jaws to faces like mine, which are elongated and quite skinny with
Same with me.
because I was a chronic mouth breather for 53 years. So that affected the way that my facial features actually grew. There is guys out there like, and as you're well aware of, Dr. Mark Levi, who's a leader in airway health as a dentist slash orthodontist. There's Mike and John Mew, who were orthodontists, and some of the young kids out there, and their parents may know, have heard of mewing, MEWING, which is about correct tongue placement, being at the top of your mouth. There's other guys out there that are all promoting nurturing healthy faces or healthy faces, and that is all about getting people to breathe through their nose, tongue placement at the top of the mouth, which then brings the jaw forward, opening up the airways at the back. Sadly, too many children's jaws are recessed back, compromising their airways. So what happens is they open up their mouth, believing that they have to get more air in that way. And therefore, there's a terminology called adenoid faces, which is the correct terminology for now those people with long faces. Too many getting adenoids cut out. Too many kids are getting tonsils cut out due to the volume of air that's coming in, inflaming everything. Yes, sure, some kids have got inflamed tonsils or enlarged adenoids, and they have to have surgical procedures. But a lot of the time, in my opinion only, that if we can correct their breathing patterns, unnecessary trauma for young people can be avoided or delayed.
And that's the exact thing that Konstantin Buteyko really tapped on. He was researching his patients and his clients, and when he went around watching them doing sleep studies, he was able to notice that they had irregular breathing patterns, and as a result, they ended up with so many complications, anxiety.
It's stress, mate. Stress is the precursor to all dis-ease. If you're breathing through your mouth, it's a sign of stress. So from stress, what happens? We have metabolic waste. We have metabolic dis-ease. There's a whole host of autoimmune issues that come from being in too much stress. One way to mitigate that stress, or at least start to control that stress and maybe have a chain reaction to reduce some of those symptoms of autoimmune issues, is to start breathing correctly. And that should always be through the nose. And this is what, just bringing back to that point before, we've got our conscious connection breathing. So if you're doing Wim Hof, and you might be doing that for an hour or two a week, yeah, it's probably 500 breaths. Out of the 100,000 or 250,000 breaths you're going to breathe that week, 500 breaths is not going to make a difference. However, you've got to be careful with all this conscious connection breathing. If you've already got dysfunctional breathing patterns, it could be feeding into those dysfunctional breathing patterns. So as a warning here, I always say to people that are really wanting to get into Wim Hof and all those over-breathing, rebirthing, somatic, breakthrough breath works, cathartic breath work, you need to be fit and healthy to be able to do it and have correct breathing patterns. Otherwise, the outcome that you may have might be great in the moment, but for the rest of the 23 hours for that day, your body will still be in stress if you're not nasal breathing. So
David, you make a really important point about dysfunctional breathing patterns and how that really can affect us, our longevity through life, through getting quality sleep, through not having the right recovery, through not being in a rest and digest mode, through being stressed out, highly strung, and as a result, leading to burnout, chronic fatigue, and crashing out, which is very common. I've been doing a lot of research about corporate workers and entrepreneurs, and interestingly enough, that 92% of entrepreneurs experience some form of burnout, chronic fatigue, and are just not performing anywhere near where they used to or anywhere near their optimum. And what does it come down to? Recovery, rest, because they're always in a stressful state. And you're so right, David. It really comes down to the quality sleep that we get, because that really is the only time of the day that we can purely recover from everything that we've experienced for the past 16 hours that we've been out and about working or doing whatever we're doing during the day.
Yep, 100%. When was the last time, and I'll ask this for the people watching this, when was the last time you took 20 minutes to go lie on a floor and just breathe in and out through your nose to allow your body to restore itself? We don't. We use sleep or our bed as our time. And if we're not getting that correct sleep, well, our body's not restoring. I love doing these workshops because I go through a guided meditation and some breath work. And I then encourage people, say, when was the last time you took this moment for yourself to actually be present with your body, not just with our minds? We spend a lot of time in our head, but we're more than just a head, we're also a body. And our body depends on what our head's doing. But if we can give some love back to our body and just taking that time to actually lie down and recover and practice slow breathing exercises to induce our parasympathetic nervous system, our body is going to thank us for that. Slow breathing means we're actually going to live longer because the less breaths we take, the longer we are going to live. So breathing correctly and through the nose is also an anti-aging procedure. You know, no pills required. We just have to breathe less. Optimally, somewhere between 4 to 8 breaths, 4 to 10 breaths, 6 to 10 breaths a minute is optimal. Not this 12 to 20, which you'll see in medical textbooks now. 12 to 20 is too much. It's been normalized. That's why it's now been published as that. It's because most people are breathing or they're over breathing, which means they're in chronic states of hyperventilation. They are breathing too much air. And just like overeating leads to chronic dis-ease, so does over breathing.
What an important point you touched on again there. Just like overeating, overbreathing can lead to complications in the human body. I noticed that I only breathe 3 to 4 breaths per minute. And if I do end up breathing a little more, it is only because I'm exercising or I've just done a workout, I've skipped with a jump rope, or I've done shadow boxing or something like that. But the great benefits that I've noticed is when I do naturally sit here and I'm sitting in the chair and breathing only 3 to 4 times per minute, I'm not just breathing in and breathing out. I'm breathing in through my nose.
Yep.
Holding it there for a little while, and then I'm breathing out. And before you know it, that's 15, 20 seconds already gone, just like that. If you think about it, when we talk about box breathing, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds hold, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds hold. That's 20 seconds. You do 3 of those per minute, and that's all you really need. And when you're breathing that slow, the quality air, the ability for you to override your central nervous system and be in a parasympathetic state, as Dave talked about, is unmatched.
Just a little caveat there with box breathing. Starting at 4 seconds, you can work your way up to 10 seconds. 10 seconds, that's a 40-second breath. So you're breathing 1.5 times a minute. I do not recommend doing any breath holds for people with panic disorders, anxiety, someone who's quite overwhelmed. This is why I always do baseline testing with my clients when they come in the door, so I know exactly where they're at. So if a breath coach is prescribing you doing box breathing and you're at a high risk of anxiety, overwhelm, panic disorder, racing mind, or anything like that, you could actually make their situation worse. So box breathing seems to be one of those ones that go to, yes, it is 16-second breaths, so it's 3.5 breaths a minute, but there's breath holds in there, and breath hold stimulates death. So why would you want to give that to somebody who's got anxiety or panic disorder or anything like that? You could actually send them off to the hospital.
You could actually build them up to that, can't you, Dave? So
it's all about increasing that tolerance to CO2 with breathe light, with 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. It's just getting them aware of their breathing. And then we can not even start to think about breath holds until what we call their body oxygen level test has started to increase. So as soon as they start, particularly people with anxiety, nasal breathing is paramount for them. Okay. Once again, breath holds is probably not something that I would introduce straight away, but it would be something that I would introduce along the way once their anxiety and their symptoms have subsided. Because the last thing you want to do as a breath coach is give somebody an exercise which is going to make their situation worse, which is why it's always important that I do my baseline testing and have one-to-one consults over Zoom or face-to-face, in corporate settings, anything like that. Everyone's signing waivers. I'm always going through. If anyone's, doesn't want to do breath holds or anything like that, or if it's got anxiety, they just need to be aware that they're doing breath holds, because breathwork's this new big tool out there. I actually don't classify myself as a breath worker. I classify myself as a restorative breathing coach. I restore the natural flow of how the body intends you to breathe, and that is through the nose. Yes, I do the Wim Hof and Kriya breath work and somatic breath work, but that's for another story. My main thing is I help people regain their power by bringing their breath under control. And
So
that is the
one of
change.
the most important things that take away from tonight's session is by nasal breathing, you're building your tolerance for carbon dioxide. And in doing so, you're not just breathing light, you're breathing right. And as a result, you're getting better filtered air, oxygenated air. You're not in a stressful state, and you're able to recover better and reset your body. Dave, it's been amazing chatting to you tonight. I look forward to catching up with you in person and having even more in-depth conversations about the stuff that we work on. Obviously, the Footprints Retreat and some of the other programs that I'm looking at putting together. I'm currently working on a couple of other programs, but slowly but surely we're starting to get all these content, and we're going to start pushing it out there and building our audience. Before we finish off tonight, I'd like to just share with some of our audience watching this back that we do have this March the 15th, I do have a half-day retreat coming up where we will be running that here at Bondi Beach. And if they want to know anything about that retreat, to just shoot us a message on Facebook, @Ronan's Coaching, or the same thing with hashtag @Ronan Coaching on Instagram, or simply just email us at ynvhealthandwellness@hotmail.com. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you all. Dave, once again, great to have you here. Don't forget that next week I will be joined by Nikki Ravelman, who is the nutritionist from the Health Emporium. She's the lady that does all our naturopathic and nutrition classes and workshops for our Footprints Retreat and other retreats that we run. So I'm looking forward to listening to what she has to say. She's going to be talking about fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. She's going to be talking about gut health and all the other great things related to nutrition and the human body. So I'm really looking forward to that. Guys, have an amazing evening. Enjoy your week. And once again, from me and Dave, take care and have an amazing evening.